Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest, he's Lamby series. We talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, starting with Cosmic Ghost Rider, the card coming out on Tuesday, a 5/7 on reveal. Remove the abilities from front row enemy cards here. A card that seems targeted at Invisible Woman First Steps, at Morbius, at all of these onboard synergy decks that compound onboard synergy into the later turns of the game. Very interesting card. Very wide-ranging potential use cases. Captain Carter, all sorts of stuff. How good do you think this card can be, though, at the very prohibitive energy cost of 5?
Yeah, so this card is obviously understated. Like 5/7 is not a great stat line, right? But I think when this card hits, it hits very, very, very hard. Because you just named a few things, right? Invisible Woman, Morbius, anything that floats like on the board and then like hopes to like win turn 6 because it just grows bigger, whatever, that kind of stuff. Like this one, it just comes down and then obliterates that. And the funny thing is, I feel like this card actually is semi-targeted at early game scalers, right? Because early game scalers will always be on the front. Right, like I mean, Angela is for the old guys like me, but like you get my point. Basically, the stuff that sits there and gets bigger, this destroys to a certain extent, right? So I think there is a place for this card in decks as a tech card. This is a very weird. Calling this a tech card is kind of weird, but like it's definitely not a card that wins a lane based on power. You know, it kind of wins a lane based on invalidating your opponent's early build up, and I think this is something that could see play. You know, I don't know where. I mean, mid-range power, just throw it in and then invalidate early game. It could be a thing.
I do think there's going to be a lot of like really awful deck building with this guy. Where
no, wait, stop. We are not supposed to make a deck for this. This is throw it in there and win the game card. Not like I'm making a Cosmic Ghost Rider deck. No, it's not.
Yeah, like someone like I can see the Twitter post now of like check out my Cosmic Ghost Rider deck, and it's the same tech pile, but like Cosmic Ghost Rider is in there, and it's probably making the deck worse because you're not playing like whatever Cannonball Mercury thing, but it's cool. I guess my comparison would be like, is this a better card than Legion? And I think a lot of the time the answer is going to be yes. I think a lot of the time the answer is going to be yes, but it's also going to have a lot of a, not necessarily lower high roll, but Legion literally wins the game a decent amount of the time and then literally does very little the rest of the time. This guy, I think, is going to be a much higher floor than Legion, and I think that's the question of whether or not you're going to get him into your deck. Largely, the question for cards like Legion is what are you doing that allows you to not necessarily take a turn off, but take a turn playing something this small a lot of the time. What deck can afford to play a 5-drop that might be terrible, right? We saw a lot of this with Stardust, which is undeniably a good card in the matchups that it is relevant in, but it's hard to find a deck that is like willing to support it. These tech cards sort of exist in a way where if they're not relevant a lot of the time, you need to sort of hook them onto a powerful strategy. So right now, is there a deck that you see this like excelling in, something that is able to support this kind of strategy, or are you gonna be like a little bit more iffy on it? Like, could you hook this into a Scream deck and say, I think this makes a lot of sense here, just as a deck that doesn't really care specifically about turn 5, that is just willing to do something like that? Probably goes in Arishem, right? That can afford Legion. That's sort of my thought process as to like, where is this card fitting in?
Yeah, no, I think you got that like kind of like in theory correct. Like I would play this in the decks that could play Legion as well, because you did say, right, that Legion is kind of like this card's kind of like a higher floor Legion of sorts, whereby if it like Legion kind of just depends on your opponent's locations. This one depends on Legion depends on locations. This one depends on like the cards that your opponents played early, right? So I feel like the floor for this is like a little bit higher as well. But the same decks that play Legion could play this, like you said, Arishem, like Silky Smooth style decks. I correlate Scream to a bit like Silky Smooth style decks, which is like a lot of high power early game, and then like you can afford to play like a slightly lower power 5, you know, which is this, a slightly lower power 5, but it invalidates your opponent's early game, which is like your catch-up mechanic, right? Like you play powerful early game, and then your opponent does like busted stuff with their own early game, but this one invalidates their early game. So I think this can fit in that kind of shell. Don't think it fits in. Obviously, I don't think you can find space for this in like Victoria Hand stuff, right? Because you can't really play clunky one-off cards in Victoria Hand stuff. So probably not there. But yeah, Arishem, Silky Smooth style deck, Scream. I guess you can fit that there, yeah. fit this there.
It's weird because Victoria Hand feels like it would be such a good shell. When you talk about something that, like, I want a powerful plan that can proactively win games while supporting this tech card, I can't imagine you can go too wrong with V-Hand, but V-Hand has a lot of spoken for late game, right? Like,
Correct.
it wants to be playing Misery Hood on 5 if that's when you draw those cards. It wants to be playing Frigga V-Hand on 5 if that's when you draw those cards. And so it doesn't have as much room for that kind of stuff, especially if it's not necessarily going to make it that way. And it really has spoken for turn 6s too. There's a lot of like, I want to play a Hood, I want to play a V-Hand, I want to play a lot of created cards. I'm doing all of this stuff. So when am I actually going to play the Cosmic Ghost Rider in a deck like that, despite the fact that it does have the power to support this kind of thing? Also, I want everyone watching to know, when I made a face and looked off screen earlier, my cat, I'm 90% sure, just ate the entire wrapper to a cough drop. Like, I'm 90% sure that just happened. I've never seen her do that before. She seems totally fine, and I checked the ingredients on these cough drops already. There's nothing that will actually damage her in there, and it's a wrapper, not the actual cough drop. But I just looked over, and she's eating it like a fish. So that's the explanation of what was happening while Lamby was talking there and why I was looking so completely sketched out. It wasn't what he was saying. My cat is very stupid. The Fallen One came out. He's not a bad card, but I think in my excitement for this card, one of the things I missed was that a lot of why I was excited for this card was that he went with something that was already good, right? That being the sort of the Mr. Fantastic and Surge mid-rangey points buff decks, right? Where it's like, you don't have to be a buff deck, but you can be a buff deck. You just naturally get this. And then this card came out the week they nerfed Mr. Fantastic First Steps.
Yeah.
And I almost find that shocking. Like, I think a lot of people look at they're just ruthlessly exploiting us to make money. They sell a season pass card and then they nerf it. I don't think they could have picked a worse time to nerf that card. I think them choosing to nerf Mr. Fantastic First Steps when they did lost them money on Fallen One sales in an incredibly meaningful way. Because without that card at 2, this card is dramatically, dramatically worse. I really don't know another way to say it. I was very excited for this card. I think maybe I was too high on it, even if Mr. Fantastic and Surge stayed in their same forms. But largely, without those things, it ends up much, much lower. This is a card I thought could be like a 7 or an 8. I think it right now comes in at like a 4 or a 5 in the absence of those cards helping it out.
I mean, it's a 5/5, right? So it's a 5. But anyway.
Okay.
Okay, no, but I get it. Like, the thing about this card is that it needs support, right? It's in fact, it's definitely powerful, but it's like the amount of support you need to put into to make this work right now is like not worth it. I mean, that's the same as a lot of other cards that require support, right? If the supporting actors require too much effort, right, you just revert back to playing mid-range soup that doesn't require support. So that's the problem with this one, I would say.
I think there is a use case for this card in the future if it gets to, like, it really just needs like one more card, I feel like. And the use case for this card is basically, it is your mid-range pile card. It's your Sarah, but it can't get Mobiused. So in a world where Mobius is incredibly popular, I can absolutely see that use case still existing. As a relative meme card, this is an unparalleled sort of symbiote Spider-Man card. Just an absolute banger in whatever, like, ridiculously outrageous Galactus deck you're playing. Like, that is what this card is doing right now. I just don't know if he has the juice to make it as a competitive card outside of those contexts, though, when his power level, relatively speaking, is so low. And there's another dynamic happening here with Fallen One specifically that I think is really interesting, because it is such a... I almost thought they moved past this, where the power of the ability being tied to the power of the card feels like it's very hard to adjust up or down. This is a card that does not have a lot of good knobs on it. Let's say you make it 1 power more, right? You make it a 5/6. Is that not just like a pretty outrageously good card a lot of the time? Aren't you just very interested in doing that? You get
like a 4/5, and it's kind of disgusting as well.
Right. It's because the power is tied to the ability. It's the Lady Deathstrike thing. And Lady Deathstrike, they uncoupled those and then started being able to actually do balance changes to her. My worry with Fallen One is, I don't know. A lot of the time people look at these as like, do I buy these cards? With Fallen One, it's like, I would find it dramatically harder to figure out a good way to buff this card. So if you expect it to if you want to buy the card expecting it to get buffed, I think that is a riskier play with Fallen One than it would be with other cards. Firelord and Airwalker have also released Airwalker in high voltage, Firelord in Series 4. I have played a few Firelord decks in the context of trying it in various Phoenix Forcey type shells. It's not the worst thing in the world. The value is there. It's a 4/6 that brings back some stuff. It requires a lot of setup. Airwalker, on the other hand, I have seen only negative reviews from my friends that have picked it up. For example, Butt, the king of bad cards, said, this is just an awful, terrible card. It feels so bad. And this is a guy who played a lot of Toxie Doxie before it got buffed. So that's sort of the level Airwalker is operating on. And I think that this is a really interesting space to make cards in, because when I look at a tutor effect, an effect that like pulls something out of your deck, right? That seems like something that would naturally be strong. There are probably interesting things to do with it, but the deck building requirements are so stringent that it's hard to actually do any of those things in a consistent way, which is probably good, because I think it would be really bad if there was a really good Airwalker deck in order for, like, that just seems like a really unpleasant thing to happen for a consistent Airwalker deck to exist. So largely, these are mediocre cards. They are not necessarily like Mad Thinker or Mole Man. I think Firelord especially stands out as like, oh, you can do stuff with this. That is like, actually, the rate on it is pretty good. But I do think that Airwalker specifically, the early reviews I'm seeing are notably negative, even from people that love doing like weird, janky stuff. It does not seem like a card that has found a home yet.
Yeah, I actually don't really have much to add. You're just quite spot on this. Firelord, for example, it's just a very basic, simple card, right? It just doesn't do too much in the game right now. Like it's just too fair, it's just way too fair of a card.
A little bit.
Airwalker, the interesting thing about Airwalker is that I don't think it's supposed to be allowed to be too good, right? Like you said, if you change some of the parameters on the card, it just becomes like unfair. And a consistent Airwalker deck is definitely going to be unfair. So this card, Airwalker specifically, is stuck in a space whereby it's not allowed to be too good on purpose, I would say. Or obviously, in the future, when we revisit this again, and then, like, the game gets power crept to the point where Airwalker is like actually fair enough to be played, then fine. But for now, I don't think it's meant to be consistent for sure.
Yeah, I do wonder about like making designs like this, because they are cool and evocative, and the flavor on these guys is really sick. One of them dying and getting the other is literally how it worked in the comics. It's sick. It's very cool. But there is a point where it's like, at what point do these game mode cards, these series 4s, at what point do they have to be real cards? Like, do we want these to be real cards? Because, like, I don't know. Every time they've been real cards that are acquired in ways that are not the Series 5 pack, basically, people get really mad at them. Like, whenever they're, like, really relevant cards in either a game mode, in the Season Pass Premium, in the Season Pass normally, anything other than in the token shop, there is, like, a backlash to them. So, I guess my question is this what we would want those cards to be, or would we want them to be the more compelling and potentially scarier and potentially more broken versions? I am interested in hearing what people think. Nerf wish lists. I have been thinking a great deal about the ways in which Marvel Snap players interface with basically anything that's good. When Invisible Woman first steps, I was like, oh, this is the best deck. Not all the comments, but there was like a sizable portion of like, I hate this company, hate this game, this metagame has made me quit. They nerf Invisible Woman first steps. It's now like tech deck o'clock. Hate this company, hate this game, this metagame is going to make me quit. And I think that there is a degree to which I, seeing this from the outside, can only chalk it up to, oh, it's just whatever's good, you're going to get mad at it. Like, that's just how it is, because it's not the thing you specifically want to do. There are going to be more people when there's only one deck, or when one deck is the best deck, there are more people who don't like that deck than do. And that's the natural case.
Correct.
So when it comes to Nerf wish lists, I don't want to be like too harsh on this stuff. I do think Cannonball Mercury is out of line. I do think Juggernaut is out of line. I have thought that for a long time. But what I want to talk about is, what can we do to buff cards to make them more exciting? So I know this is titled Nerf Wishes, but I want to talk about what I would like to improve in the game. And to me, what I want to improve is decks that are sort of tier C and bring them up to tier B. Because in the next topic, we're going to talk about how we keep regressing every time like a new cool thing comes out. It's Thanos. Okay, we're back to Cannonball Mercury. It's Invisible Woman. Okay, we're back to Cannonball Mercury. And it's not literally Cannonball Mercury. It's just like Shang tech decks, you know, things like that. Iron Patriot, good cards, Gladiator, that kind of deal, right? We keep coming back to that because it keeps not getting nerfed. And while I do think it would be reasonable to nerf that stuff, what I also want to do is push other decks into the, oh, we're back to this tier. Like Discard, for example. I think Discard could use some buffs. I think Meek could get some extra points of power. I think Scorn could do an extra point of power. I think there are interesting things they could do to make Discard a stronger deck that gets it back into the, oh, they just nerfed some stuff. Let's go play some Discard. Let's go have some fun. Destroy. I want to get Destroy into that spot. What could they do to make that happen, right? They buffed Agony. That's actually like not bad. It's a notable increase to what they're doing. They're making cards like Headpool and, you know, the new Captain Marvel zombie in October. Those are cool. They might do what I'm talking about. But like to me, my instinct is that when things are nerfed, I want people playing Destroy and Discard. Even if they don't stick around, I want people doing that. One of the big things that stands out to me is nobody plays Arishem after nerfs anymore. It just doesn't happen. And it's like, where's that gone? Like, I'm not saying we need to buff Arishem, but that is worrying that immediately after nerfs, we go back to, you know, deck with no name, the Cannonball decks, right? Like, that's what we're doing after nerfs anymore. We don't even bother with Arishem or Destroy or Discard. And I feel like that's bad.
Yeah, I actually thought you were gonna start that topic with how do we launch Juggernaut into the stratosphere again, but like I guess not. But I get it. I get that you still want to launch it into the stratosphere.
Still do.
That's one.
I'm just like, I think everyone knows at this point.
Yeah, everyone knows at this point, and everyone knows that I don't think you should launch it into the stratosphere as well. But like anyway, so like since everyone knows all these, like I'm just curious, because I didn't check your previous video and all that, but like I remember I mentioned like in order for things to change and for us to not regress. I mean, this is a bit tying in with the next topic as well.
Yeah.
For us to not regress strictly to the same like mid-range soup meta, we should buff like 69 cards that people already have, right? Like
exactly.
I do think that makes sense, right? Because like you talked about Destroy, you talked about Discard, you talked about maybe even Arishem. Like if you buff like across the board cards that we all already own, like everyone has access to like potentially game-changing meta stuff, and then like it doesn't require the release of new cards. It's also going to make the player base happy because they get new things to do without actually buying new things. So I really do feel like in terms of this like buff/nerf wishes thing, just buff a crap load of stuff and see what happens.
A thing that Jerry Thompson, my co-host on the KMBest Podcast, has suggested. And to be clear, Jerry Thompson, one of the best Magic players of all time, incredibly, incredibly adept at card games and understanding things about card games, is that because, and I'm paraphrasing here, because there isn't enough of an incentive for people to break the metagame, to figure out what beats what, because the only people really trying to do that are people like me who do it for the sake of content, right? Like I can make a video about how to beat Invisible Woman, right? But that's not necessarily enough of an incentive compared to a tournament system.
Yes.
We end up with these metagames where things that are just default good, not necessarily the best, just default good, are regarded as this unbeatable, impregnable fortress. And I think that's sort of how I feel about this tech deck going on right now. Like, could you nerf some of the cards in it? Yeah, I mean, I think you could. I think there are some things that I think are problematic about it. But is it unbeatable by any means? No, there's like a million different ways to try to interface with it. And basically all of them involve just play some stuff the tech guards don't hit. Like, yeah, Cannonball Mercury, Fenris Wolf, you know, if they get their combo, sure, maybe you lose. But that's how card games work sometimes. Just play some stuff like, I don't know, Cerebro. Nice Cannonball. Nice Shang-Chi. Good luck with that. Doesn't do anything here. Play some Scream decks or whatever. Nice Cannonball. Nice Shang-Chi. Like, you're just not really meaningfully interacting with me. And I think that largely that's kind of the approach that you have to these decks, where it's not just like, you know, you can play them and it'll be safe and it'll work. But if you really want to go out of your way to beat them, I genuinely don't think it's that hard. It's just there's not that much of an incentive for people to do that outside of just playing the deck.
Yeah, so I personally have, I mean, I know who he is, but I don't know him personally, Jerry Thompson. But the fact that he mentioned that one thing already makes me like a fan, which is he said that people are just not trying hard enough, which is kind of true as well. Because like, okay, so not trying to like reference another game too much, but like I played Shadowverse a lot recently, and then I realized that because the game is highly competitive, right? There's obviously a set meta and stuff like that. But every damn day the meta gets broken. Like quite literally every 2 days, someone finds a way to do something better than just regressing back to the safe, like original normal or whatsoever. So I feel like in Marvel Snap as well, yes, obviously we have very safe things to go back to after nerfs and stuff like that. But the safe things that you go back to are also very beatable, actually, if you think about it. It's just that there's not enough like push to play more of the stuff that beats your initial, like safety nets. There's a lot, like you said, just play Cerebro, immune to a lot of stuff. Just play other decks that are immune to or have higher ceiling than higher power ceiling than like the safe stuff that you've been playing, which is I think actually a lot of things, by the way, because like the stuff that we've regressed to, like the Cannonball Mercury stuff is, oh wait, that's the next topic as well. It's actually relatively low power, by the way. I didn't realize, but yes, the stuff that we are actually regressing to is actually relatively on the low power side, which I will talk a bit more in the next topic as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I think people don't appreciate about tech card metas, and I don't blame them for not appreciating this, it is a little bit like, oh, look at the silver lining. But in tech card metas, the overall power in the metagame is lower. And when the overall power in the metagame is lower, that means that decks that were previously getting wholly invalidated by these like highly efficient synergy decks, right? When you look at what Invisible Woman First Steps was doing, it was just outpowering a lot of decks. You could not play a Scream deck into Invisible Woman First Steps because they just had in their deck, they would spend the same amount of energy as you and get twice as much power. And it was just like, oh, okay, why do I do this? What is the point of this? And so when you have decks like Scream that are typically getting their best against these like slow mid-range play one card at a time decks, that's actually what these tech card decks are, especially when you're able to build a deck in that vein that is good at this sort of progressive advantage grinding that also doesn't get, massively Shang-Chi'd. That's always sort of been the case for a Scream deck, right? Or for the Ajax deck, where it's just like, oh well, I'm just gonna play some good cards. I've been playing the Quicksilver Domino Ajax deck recently, which is totally fine. Like you can just be like, all right, okay, nice deck full of tech. I have a bunch of cards that none of the tech works on, and I have more energy than you because I've got a Wiccan, and now I just win the game because I play more cards than you and they're better than yours. And that kind of gameplay is totally viable to play against these lower power tech decks. I think something people don't get about tech decks is there are going to be weak spots in the armor. And if you just stick in those weak spots, you can play things that are much lower power than would normally be allowed to be played because the tech decks are policing the things that are super high power.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about playing things that are slightly lower powered and still succeeding, it's like you just need to just be a bit more powerful than the tech decks, just a bit, right? Like Silky Smooth metas way back, by the way, they weren't like exactly a lot higher power than Shang-Chi decks, but they were like playing 2/5s, and 2/4s, and that was enough. It's not like you're like absurdly like 3x their power or whatever. It's just a little bit more, and that was enough because the tech decks win by allocating cards in their deck to invalidate, and the invalidation cards are low power. Shang-Chi is very low power card, but if you are playing all 10s, it works, So I think at the end of the day, there were, I wouldn't say always, but there've been like, I think mostly times whereby if you are in a tech deck meta, there's just like a bunch of cards that are just completely immune, right? Silky Smooth, and then like even to a certain extent recently that Hydra Stomper build of like Silky Smooth of move cards was also relatively immune. I mean that meta no one played Killmonger for the Batroc, but like I do think that deck was relatively immune to many things. So there's always like a deck that's just a little bit higher powered than the tech deck, which is kind of interesting because then you actually just get to play the game, like you don't have to worry about your tech not being useful, right? You just play slightly more powerful cards than the tech deck and you probably beat the tech deck on average because their cards don't do anything to you. And you're just a bit bigger.
Yeah, it's a very interesting spot because part of the reason I enjoy the Scream deck right now is that Batroc is so good against Juggernaut. Where it's so just good, like you just have like Batroc Magneto final turns where like you Sam Wilson shield your Batroc to their Juggernaut lane and then also pull some stuff out of it. It just makes being a Juggernaut one trick a little bit way harder to do, basically. And so, like, that kind of stuff, these like sort of sub dynamics, that also matters. But the larger point of like when you actually get down to it and you look at these decks, they are playing 2 3s, 3 6s, 3 8s, and that stuff is good, but it is not unbeatable. And what your job is to do is figure out something that lines up well enough into their big answers, Shang-Chi, things like that, but also manages to beat out the 3 6s and 3 8s. That's really your job when you're attacking something like this. What lines up well into Shang-Chi, what lines up well into Killmonger, and still beats, a Luna Snow and a Gladiator. That's kind of where you want to be at.
Yeah, you see, this is why we don't need to launch Juggernaut into the stratosphere. Just move your own stuff and play 2 8s and 3 9s, man. Also, you don't have to launch Shang-Chi into the stratosphere as well. 2 8s and 3 9s, guys.
I still want to launch Juggernaut into the stratosphere.
Okay.
Fenris Wolf is a sort of low-key problematic card. One of the debates in high elo circles recently has been like, is it a Cannonball issue or is it a Fenris Wolf issue? And players I respect have been on both sides of this debate. So I don't want to sit here and come out and say this is a 100% like Cannonball or Fenris Wolf issue. To me, I think Fenris Wolf is maybe a little too good, just at 2-3 free rolling what he is. Maybe it's just a problem of like, maybe he needs to be a 2-2. We look at cards like it is so far from a requirement now for a card to be a 2-3 to get good play at this point. Like when you see what Mr. Fantastic did, people are still playing Surge at 2-1. It strikes me as maybe it's time to take some power off of Fenris Wolf, just baseline looking at him. But Cannonball Mercury having its force multiplied, I think that is relevant. I still think it is probably a Cannonball Mercury problem, though.
Yeah, I actually think it is a Cannonball Mercury problem because I was thinking about like the Fenris Wolf issue, right? I mean, or what could potentially be a Fenris Wolf issue. Firstly, there's like so many good like 2-drops in the game, right? The fact that the Fenris Wolf needs like you need to play Fenris Wolf in a very specific deck, which is like Cannonball, Mercury stuff. Like, I mean, Fenris Wolf obviously works with other cards as well, but like the only one that's like pulling its weight this much is like the Cannonball Mercury shell, because that's the one that kind of gives the Fenris Wolf the most like inevitability. Like you can secure very effectively a game if you have the setup of the Cannonball Mercury Fenris Wolf thing. Other Fenris Wolf interactions feel a bit, even if they work, they don't win the game. You know, you get what I mean? Like even if they just work or like you just draw them, they don't exactly win the game. Whereas Cannonball Mercury Fenris Wolf stuff just kind of just like invalidates so much and it puts so much power on your side of the board as well. So really don't think Fenris Wolf is an issue. I actually never really thought of like ever nerfing it regardless, to be honest. Yeah.
I will say this about Fenris Wolf. It's clearly built to be a tech card that has exceeded its portfolio, right? Like it is supposed to be, people playing Hela or Ghost Rider.
Wait, we are calling
Agatha.
Fenris Wolf a tech card?
That's what it's supposed to be, I think. Like, it's not, I don't think it's supposed to be, I blow up your biggest guy and then get your biggest guy. And I think if it was supposed to be, I blow up your biggest guy and then get your biggest guy, it wouldn't be a 2-3. And because it's become that, I kind of think it probably shouldn't be a 2-3. Even though I think conceptually, like, to me, Fenris Wolf is like proto Stardust. They were like, what if we did a card that was good against Hela? So what does that have to look like? And if you build Fenris Wolf in that context, I can see how you end up at 2-3. But then you do Cannonball Mercury, and it's like, oh, the biggest card your opponent has is yours. You've constructed like Old Leader. That's what you've done here. And I think that is where you get to this card probably shouldn't be a 2-3 anymore.
Yeah, I actually think that Fenris Wolf is... Okay, my opinion on Fenris Wolf is I think that it's supposed to actually be a power card. Like, you're supposed to gain power from doing that thing. But the problem is, Cannonball Mercury Fenris Wolf is invalidation and gaining power all at the same time. I think Fenris Wolf is okay if you are, like, blowing up their guy with Shang-Chi, like, on one turn, and then... Like, this Cannonball Mercury thing is happening all at once. Like, the whole turn just invalidates everything, right? So I feel like if the Fenris Wolf setup takes a bit more like time, it doesn't just all happen at once and your opponent loses, I think it's fine. You know, like if it's just purely I shank the guy, I bring back the guy, I think it's okay. And like they don't straight up lose because of that, but Cannonball Mercury kind of just makes them straight up lose because of that. That's what I think.
But potentially bad idea. What if Fenris Wolf got the elixir text where it only brought stuff back that died last turn?
Like, oh. Yeah, it's
That
a
would
bit
be
more restrictive, right?
it would probably be super terrible to do that on an activate. Like, the more I think about it, the more I think that's probably
definitely.
a bad idea. It's not actually a good solution. It just kind of sucks. But it is something that's like in the back of my mind where it's like you said the problem was it happening all in one turn. That's my like one size fits all solution to that. You can make sure it doesn't if
Okay.
you want to do that. Yeah. Last up, I had a bunch of fun on Mid Deck Monday. We're going to bring back Mid Deck Monday again. We're on to Mid Deck Monday number 2, which is actually, it's technically Mid Deck Monday number 3. I was demoing the concept a couple weeks ago, but whatever. Mid Deck Monday number 2. Just wanted to thank everyone for showing up. Just wanted to, I appreciate the support as I sort of branch into, I was having a conversation with Jerry again, and he was like, yeah, I used to watch Tyson. For him, it was like Mid Deck Monday every day. I'm branching into that space of content creation, and I really appreciate the support. So thank you so much. I just wanted to say that. I hope you all show up again for Mid Deck Monday today. And thank you so much for doing it last time. And I think my cat has showed up because she's also a fan of mid decks, would be my guess. That's happening here. Lamby.
I mean,
oh, yes, go ahead.
yeah, no, I mean, I just want to say there's definitely a lot of like mid decks out there that need you to shine a spotlight on them, right? For a little bit.
Yeah.
Whether they end up working or not, I think it doesn't really matter because there's a lot of people that just like to play this game to play their favorite deck, and a lot of the times the favorite deck is quite mid. I mean, not always, but like sometimes. So yeah, I think that's a good segment to have. Thais also had Tea Time with Thais. I don't know what that actually is, but it's just his it's like his name. Like he calls it Tea Time with Thais. I don't know if it's actually a segment or not, but he used to say that a lot. So Mid Deck Mondays, good name. That's all I have to say. I'll keep it up, I guess.
Will do. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I've been KMBest. That's been KM Cat. That's been Lamby Series. He's gonna take us out.
Yeah, that's been KM Cat that ate a rapper or something. But yeah, anyway, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.
Seriously, dude, I looked over and she was slurping it down like a fish. Like,
I cannot imagine.
insane.